there, everyone. Today we have kind of a more Marvel-esque episode lined up for you today. And we also have the return of a guest who has been featured in our episode 111, our KOTOR fan celebration. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm very good, thank you.
So, can you kind of introduce yourself and what you do?
I'm currently learning to do concept art for the past 2 years after getting inspired by the works of like Brian Matthews and Doug Chang from Lucasfilm. I decided that I wanted to learn to do concept art, which is the design of things in film and TV and games.
You also kind of helped us out with some concept art for our politics episode 109, where Revan acted as arbiter on Manon, and it was pretty good. And it's clear that you're talented and you have a lot to offer the world of concept art and art. So it's great to have you on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you'd mentioned, Jake, that you are wanting to get into like concept art and design. Has art always been something that you've been interested in, or has it been more recent? You mentioned like Doug Chang and stuff from LucasArts, but has pursuing art always been something you've been interested in?
I mean, it wasn't always, but during obviously over the last 4 years when I've sort of been looking at what I can actually do, I just decided, I don't really want to go down the route of becoming a doctor. So,
Sure.
Art is just more interesting, make I suppose, as they always say, make your hobby into your job and you should hopefully be happy. But it's just something I've always been interested in, but never really considered it until recently.
Yeah. I don't know, being creative and being artistic, like, is something like I learned, like, not everyone can be doctors, not everyone can be a business person and all that. Like, the world needs creativity, and that's something that I was really reminded of during Corona personally. So it's always great to see people working on, I don't know, their talents, and it's cool.
Yeah, definitely. And, today we're going to be talking, as you mentioned, Cassia, about Marvel shows. So obviously, this is going to be getting its basis from the comic book world on the new Marvel show that just wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, Moon Knight. Jake and Cassia, I guess let's start with the both of you. Was Moon Knight something you were familiar with when the show started, or were you like me? I knew that Oscar Isaac was going to be in it, and I really like Oscar Isaac, so I was interested to see it, but I didn't really know anything about the character going into the show. But was this something you, either of you, were familiar with when the show was starting up? Or?
I learned about Moon Knight pretty early on, but I never really explored the character. I never really read the comics when I was younger, but I did know that he was that he had multiple personality disorder. But I never really learned much about him until recently when the show dropped and I got interested in the character.
Yeah, so I've heard about the character. I was never really familiar with Moon Knight other than like the suit and the silhouette. I mean, there have been rumors that Moon Knight was going to be a project for about a decade, I want to say. But then like Disney Plus happened, and then there were kind of more rumors, and then some people are like, oh, this person's going to be casted, or this person, and then there were rumors it was going to be Oscar Isaac, and I was like, oh, cool. Oscar Isaac's a great part of the sequel trilogy, and I was excited to learn more about the character, and like as like the casting discussions were happening, I learned more like that it incorporated Egyptian mythology, and that the main character had dissociative identity disorder, and that people kind of considered Moon Knight to be like the Batman of the MCU. So I was like, ooh, I'm kind of pumped for this, and just the show was it was different. because it's mythology, but not like kind of like Greco-Roman mythology or Norse mythology, you know, like which I think are kind of more not saturated, but kind of like that's kind of what Western audiences are kind of exposed to most. But it was just kind of intriguing to see different, I don't know, like locations like throughout the world being used in the show, and different mythologies, and really one of the best explorations of mental health in entertainment that I've seen, period.
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned, I wasn't really very familiar with this character at all, other than just I kind of knew of Moon Knight and that it was a comic book character, but I didn't really know anything else about it. So yeah, so it was a really good examination, like you mentioned, you know, kind of in the origin of Moon Knight and Mark Spector, and you know how kind of his character came into being. I thought was really interesting, and then yeah, getting some of that lore and the world building, and you know being rooted on this kind of like Egyptian mythology was really great, and you know something very different than what we're used to kind of normally seeing. You know, in entertainment, I guess in general, but you know, also in Marvel. So yeah, so I was, as the show got started and I started to get more and more into it, into the characters, I came to you know find a lot of enjoyment out of it, and yeah, it was very kind of almost cathartic, I guess, coming out of you know 2020, 2021. You know, and seeing kind of the way that they're handling that on screen, I thought was really fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I think I just... Sorry, I'm kind of losing a battle with allergies today. So, kind of back in episode 56, I think, like, the topic of Marvel came up, and, like, I could have seen, like, the MCU kind of, the movies kind of ending with Endgame, but... I think we're on phase 4 of Marvel right now. If we're on phase 5, sorry, I missed that, you know.
Phase 11, phase something.
Yeah, phase something. We all go through phases, but I don't know, like I've been very impressed with the Disney Plus side of Marvel lately, kind of a bit more than some of the movies. And I think that they're kind of grappling with, like, real problems, like WandaVision dealt with grief very well. And I was amazed by WandaVision, and Moon Knight, I think, tackled mental health, like, in such a compelling way. What do you think about Phase 4 so far, Jake? Like, are you kind of like more of a fan of like the Disney Plus side or the movies, or you kind of like, I like them both?
I would definitely say the Disney Plus side is it's edging out quite a bit. I mean, recently I watched WandaVision, and I mean, no spoilers, but I definitely wasn't impressed by that. The show so far, though, I think they've been pretty solid. You know, from obviously WandaVision up till Moon Knight, I think they've been pretty solid so far.
Yeah, and I just loved how experimental WandaVision was, especially in its first few episodes, where they kind of did, like, different decades, you know, like, kind of like this is the I Love Lucy inspired episode. This is kind of inspired by, like, shows of the 80s, you know, and I just thought that they were kind of being able to... It's like the creatives were given free rein to kind of be experimental in ways that, like, you can't really do in a MCU movie released in theaters as much, but I think they've kind of been getting a little bit more experimental, like... especially with the visuals in, is it Doctor Strange in at the Multiverse of Madness, or in the Multiverse of Madness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Doctor
the Multiverse
Strange
Madness,
2, that
yeah.
one.
The Doctor Strange 2, yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of the benefit you get to this longer form storytelling, I guess, right? You don't have to pack all this action and stuff into it, and you can do a little bit more character exploration. So yeah, so that's why things like WandaVision, certainly some parts of Loki were better than others, at least for me. But then something like Moon Knight, and I think you can really kind of dive into Mark as a character more so than just have to go to Egypt and fight the bad guys. You can do more time kind of setting up his character and his struggles and how that interplays. So I really love the direction, and hopefully we get to see more of it. I think I saw that Wanda's getting her own film, so I guess we'll see how that kind of tacks on now from what's been built through WandaVision and Doctor Strange, and we'll have to see what happens to Moon Knight, I guess, going forward.
Yeah, and kind of looking back at the show, it debuted all the way kind of at the end of March. So Jake and Brian, were you guys kind of watching it week to week, or did you guys kind of catch up at the end? And we can start with Jake and then go to Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching it week to week. I was really engrossed in the show. I found it so compelling. I mean, the fact that they weren't just doing, as you said earlier, travel to this destination, fight whatever new bad guy, and then move on to, oh, these are the stakes. Here's what's going to happen. But, the good guy still wins. The fact that they did an actual, more of a character study, I found interesting compared to some of the other films and shows. I thought it hit a new tangent that Disney Plus shows can go down.
Yeah, so for me, this was something I think I watched. I think probably the week after. So I do on Tuesday nights I go over to my friend's house and we do pizza and a TV show or a movie or something, and that's normally where I'll watch the Marvel stuff, because my wife is not really into kind of this MCU sort of thing. So she and I don't watch the shows together. So I usually try to save it when I go over to like I said, to my friend's house to watch it. So, and then it just kind of got to. We were going out to see movies and weren't able to kind of keep up on it week to week. So I kind of watched the first one, and then it was a couple weeks, and then I caught up on the episodes 2 and 3. So I was watching it kind of sporadically. It was really interesting, and it was definitely something that was, kind of holding my attention and making me want to go back and revisit it. It was just a timing thing, so I didn't get to watch it week in and week out like a lot of people did. So I missed out on some of kind of the conversation of it, which is a downside of it. But yeah, it was definitely something that, even though I was going a week or two in between seeing some of the episodes, it was something that I definitely wanted to go back and revisit, because sometimes when that happens you kind of lose interest, or maybe it's not holding your attention or whatever the case is. But I didn't really find that with Moon Knight. What about you, Cassie? I think you were a weekly watcher. You were ready to go as soon as this thing dropped, I think.
Yeah, I was a weekly watcher, and I think some people out there were like, oh, the first episode wasn't intriguing enough, or the second episode wasn't intriguing enough. And I'm like, I don't know where they're coming from, because I just find it so interesting. Stephen Grant and Mark Spector are just, as you kind of learn how they're related to each other, and the Khonshu of it all, the Moon Knight of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I was just ready to go, and he works at a museum. I love museums, and just the British Museum, it has arguably too much. Maybe it should return some of what it has, to where they came from. But that's probably a discussion for another day. With someone, far smarter than me, kind of going over it. But, yeah, I was a weekly watcher, and, it really kind of made my spring, special, and it ended on May the 4th, on Star Wars Day, which is actually kind of hilarious. We had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes, and I think it covered a great story in that amount of time.
Yeah, it felt like it covered a lot of ground in 6 episodes, especially because yeah, like the first 2 episodes are kind of setting it up, and then kind of the middle part there is really kind of a kind of setting up, I guess, the story, how it's playing out in Egypt, and kind of what the main crux of what Moon Knight is, what the end goal, I guess, kind of is. And then even into like the last episodes, it's really going back and looking at Mark Spector, and his and really doing kind of this analysis on his dissociative identity disorder, and that. And I thought that was really interesting that they kind of focused on that at the first part of it, and then also kind of finished up with that almost to where it was like a bookends as being kind of the most important part of the character. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I guess, Jake, like, kind of looking at the 6 episodes, what episodes kind of were your favorite and stuck out to you, and like all that?
For me, I found episode 1 and 5 probably my favorites, mostly because episode 1 I thought was fantastic. It kept a really interesting flow to it. Like, it was kind of disjointed, but it was disjointed in a good way that made sense for it to. It set a really good tone for the show, is what I think I'm trying to say to you. I mean, some of the cuts when Stephen loses control and then he reappears, after, I don't know, some kind of bloody mess. Mm-hmm. I found it really intriguing. I think that's like what kind of hooked me initially to the show. Yeah. I mean, episode 5 was just absolutely gorgeous character study. I think it really delved deep into his DID, and I thought it was just so interesting because one thing during that episode that was, I thought, probably said the most was when Stephen's brother dies, but just pre to that, you can see, it cuts away to a shot of a crow, like a dead crow, but the skull looks exactly like Conchu's, which obviously is a good, like, sort of like, Christ, it just foreshadows the fact that Conchu's probably been, almost mentoring Mark into becoming his avatar right from the beginning, and may have even caused the death of his brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I mean, in terms of the individual episodes, like, I don't, at the time I was watching, like, none of them were really standing out too much, but now as I think back on them, there were, kind of individual moments of each of the episodes that I liked a lot. Of course, Asylum is probably the, kind of the top episode. It's the highest rated one, of course, because that's where we really are digging back into, kind of his, childhood trauma, and, what kind of led to, his, DID. And, it was just amazing. And then it's set, on the backdrop of, going out through, into the plane, into the reeds of field of reeds. And, that stuff was amazing. So yeah, of course that's the best one. But I mean, I really liked even like into like, I think it was episode 2, when you're kind of first seeing the personalities are coming to a head. And then you also had kind of the time with Ethan Hawke's character, Arthur, and you're learning more about his motivations, and you're seeing them in like their encampment or whatever that was. I thought that was a really good episode, and I liked that. I really liked any time Ethan Hawke was on screen because he was excellent, and I really liked him as that character. So kind of those were the 2 big standouts. But yeah, I mean, looking back through the whole series, there were just a lot of highlights, in each of the episodes that all kind of felt like they were running together. Maybe that was just the kind of the way that I was watching the show, but yeah, a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. Side note, kind of hilariously, when our podcast was named the Evan Hawke podcast,
mm-hmm, yeah.
Hilariously enough, not everyone knows, like, the Ebon Hawk is the ship, in Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. And people would be like, is it an Ethan Hawke podcast? And I'd be like, I wish it were. Like, I would love an Ethan Hawke podcast, but...
I think we should branch out and do an Ethan Hawke podcast. Maybe that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, like, he was even in Northman, so, like, we could do so many things with that. But, yeah, like, I just thought it was a well set up, structured season, because, like, you definitely kind of, like, in the first 2 episodes, you kind of get hints that, like, there's more to Stephen Grant than it seems, and, like, he's connected to the Moon Knight Khonshu, and then, like, he has, like, this Mark Spector side of himself, like, kind of, like, disassociative, and, like, kind of, like, they have conversations, and then, like, I'd say the adventure starts to pick up in episodes 3 and 4, like, the friendly type in the tomb, and spoilers, like, I was kind of upset that they kind of just unhinged, Alexander the Great's jaw and, like, just yanked it out of there. I was like, okay, well, some archaeologists, like, do you know how important that tomb is and, like, his body and grave and, like, how much you could learn, and, like, you kind of just desecrated that. But I guess it was, like, for the greater good, but I was like, I feel like Stephen Grant could have handled that, and, like, because he works at a museum and could have done that better. So
he could have shown a little more care in that, maybe. But
yeah,
have to do what you have to do when you're in those tombs. And yeah, I mean, we've talked about on the podcast a lot, how much we love, like, Indiana Jones and kind of archaeology, type of tropes and things. So yeah, that stuff was definitely fun and definitely great to see on screen too. So
yeah. And Layla's an interesting character. I do like that they didn't really do, like, a full love triangle. Like, it's just, like, because they're kind of, like, sort of the same person, like Mark and Steven. And, yeah, just great to not have an obligatory love triangle. Even though there's love there, it's just kind of different. Were there any other characters that either that stuck out to you guys?
I found the character of Khonshu fascinating. I mean, the fact that this god supposedly, believes that. I mean, you can almost see from Amit's point of view why Khonshu is weak as a character. He wants to deal with criminals and evildoers, as it were, after they've committed said crimes, but that may be slightly pointless. But, I don't know, the fact that he's so almost an evil character, like, compared to our, protagonist, I think it's a weird pairing, because he's so, like, I don't know, manipulative. He's a really weird. He's just interesting, because he's out of the norm for the general MCU because he's such a manipulative character.
Yeah, it's very much of like an anti-hero type, which I think is interesting, and it's even more interesting, I think, in the TV shows, because then you get the opportunity to explore those a little bit more. So.
Yeah, and I mean, like, kind of at the end of the Tomb episode, the reveal is that Mark and Steven run into Tauret, who is a hippo, and I was like, oh, we're getting interesting now. It's like,
that's right.
You think you're in an asylum and you're kind of imagining the Egyptian mythology of it all, then it's like, nope, there is a talking hippo, named Tauret, and I just love the accent and the characterization, and visually it was just kind of interesting to see that interpretation of Egyptian mythology, which, like, I've read a bit, and then like kind of through the writings of Rick Riordan became more familiar with Egyptian mythology, but it's just striking visuals to see like the field of reeds, and I'm like, oh, it's like Gladiator, or like
Right.
that kind of nighttime voyage, and like just kind of finding the balance of the heart and everything. But yeah, what made me really convinced that we needed to do an episode on Moon Knight was episode 5, Asylum. What did you guys think of it?
Asylum as a whole, I thought was pretty interesting, obviously, because it runs through basically all of Mark's backstory. It starts with Mark being really defensive, trying to keep Stephen away from learning anything about him, really trying to like stop Stephen from becoming any like more influential than he already is. And then obviously they start to delve deeper into Mark's childhood and his abusive mother, and after his mother's death, now Stephen's childhood was essentially a living nightmare apart from his dad. But you can really see how Mark's DID really starts to develop the more you see all of his, to be fair, quite horrible childhood, where he essentially got abused. So not pleasant topic, but obviously one that needed to be addressed.
Yeah, for sure. It's very interesting to find a story that's kind of that poignant in regards of analyzing mental health in this way, like within like the confines of a superhero story. But the episode itself, it's completely incredible, and Oscar Isaac is so good because it's basically like Toweret's kind of sets it up, and then it turns into I'd want to say monologue, but he's playing two characters, as Mark and as what's his other Mark and Steven, right? So, and it's going kind of through these shared memories, and the way that it looks, and I really like there's kind of when they're going into like the childhood home, and they just keep going like upstairs to like a new memory, and then they go upstairs to a new memory. It's like the house and the memories like are never ending, which is great. And then Toweret's awesome. I think let's see her the actress who did the voice is Antonia Salib. She was great. She kind of provided like a little bit of levity, which I think you need because it was some very serious, very dark stuff. And then like I mentioned, kind of in the backdrop of going through on this ship sailing through like the afterlife was just really incredible. I think like I said, it's surreal to think that we got such a deep study into mental health within the confines of this superhero story, and I thought that it was incredible. It was a fantastic episode of television for sure.
Asylum was powerful, and you kind of got to see his whole life, like Mark's whole life, and the creation of Steven, how he was able to cope, and just kind of like to see like, I guess like one thing I am kind of critical of sometimes is like everyone says like, oh, mental health matters, like it's important, but like you have to go deeper than like peppermint helps you concentrate and yoga is good for you, because sometimes mental health can be very hard, very complex, like take place over a lifetime, and it can get deep and ugly. And what I loved about this is like it respected kind of the complexities and the ugliness, and like mental health can not be pretty, but I found that this Asylum episode was respectful because it kind of showed like the reality of like what mental health the problems it can cause. But I think what I felt represented on screen, not that I have DID, but just like the struggles that he kind of went through, and just like the brokenness, after the Shiva. And I thought that this episode, maybe others had different experiences with it, and like maybe not everyone saw it positively, but I thought that it empowered those who struggled by kind of acknowledging like these problems are hard, but we're not gonna look away when it's ugly, and
Yeah,
I
definitely.
remember that the credits had like resources at the end of it, and I just thought it was very powerful and very respectful.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. And we will definitely make sure to get those resources. We'll post those in the show description as well. So, make sure if you need help or just, want to learn more, then those are good ways to do that. So I definitely want to make sure that, everyone has access to that. And I think it's important for us as, as a society to, shine more light on things like this, because it's just important to get it out into the the cultural zeitgeist. And we've talked about it before, but that's the way that hopefully things will get better and destigmatized, and people can get the help that they need and get the support that they need. That's very important stuff.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of the episode 99 we did with 501st Help, and that episode is available, and I believe you have a Star Wars mental health post on your Instagram if people need that resource. So what I like, Asylum, like I kind of went through kind of like the hell of it all, the katabasis, and then we were kind of ready for episode 6. What did you guys like about like the finale?
I honestly thought the finale was probably one of the weaker episodes of the show. It definitely felt fairly rushed, almost. Like maybe I felt like it could have done with maybe another episode to fully explore that finale, but overall, I thought it was a fairly good action-packed episode. Typical MCU. Beat the boss. It's all good. Everything kind of goes back to normal. But in my opinion, I thought the absolute, like the best part of that episode was easily and I don't mean that as in I'm glad it was over, but the actual last scene that they show, which is obviously of Jake Lockley and Khonshu finishing off the job, despite Khonshu promising that he would leave Mark and Stephen alone, which obviously leads on to the hope that there's a second season. But, maybe not. Maybe we'll. But it was good to see visually as well. I thought the actual episode was fairly strong. The CG was quite good. I thought some of the designs were really fantastic, especially one other thing was the fact that during some of the fight scenes, I thought those were really fluid and it didn't feel disjointed too much. Overall, I thought it was a fairly good episode.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. I think for me, one of the takeaways from the season was it felt maybe like they could have had one more episode just to explore Amit just a little bit more, kind of before this final confrontation. But I think that it did a good job of kind of wrapping all of that stuff up. I mean, obviously, Layla's transformation into the Scarlet Scarab, that was pretty awesome. I really liked the way that they did that, and that she was talking to the people that Amit had pass judgment on or whatever. I thought that was really cool, and I liked her transformation. Her costume was really great, and then kind of that
cool.
Post credit scene was was cool to. You could kind of look at it and say that it kind of wrapped it up for what they're trying to do with the TV show, but you could also look at it and say that opened the door to tell more in this TV show, whichever kind of way that they wanted to do it in. But yeah, I thought that it was good, and I really like kind of the visuals, especially as you're seeing Mark and Layla like fighting with Arthur, and then in behind them you have Amit and Khonshu, just these huge like gods like in the background. I thought that was really cool looking. And Jake, you brought up a good point. Like it was very fluid as they were going kind of back and forth between between the two versions there of Moon Knight, with the costume changes and things. It looked really good. So yeah, I thought it was good. I maybe would have liked it, or maybe had the episode been about 10 minutes long. It's kind of deceiving, right? Because all these episodes were like 45 minutes, but there's like 10 minutes worth of credits on each one. So
yeah, and I can understand like the finale feeling a bit rushed. I mean, I think it's the shortest episode of Moon Knight this season, and the shortest MCU Disney Plus finale. But I still like think it was a good ride. But yeah, could have probably had 7 episodes, but it seems like 6 episodes is like the Disney Plus magic number. I don't know.
Yeah.
But just kind of like to see Layla also kind of become a bit of a Egyptian superhero. I thought that was cool. And visually, the most stunning fights, I think, kind of occurred in this episode. And what a post-credit scene. I think it really made the whole season kind of click and connect. And what a reveal to see, like, Jake Lockley, and, like, Arthur Harrow is killed, What did you guys think of the post-credit scene?
I absolutely loved it, because it paralleled exactly what I wanted to see. Because when I was reading the Jeff Lemire run, I mean, this is a very minor thing, but the fact that you got to see Khonshu in the suit, I thought was wonderful. I mean, it's very minor, but it was a nice parallel to the comics. And obviously, I think Oscar Isaac's acting throughout the entire season has been it's been fantastic. I mean, the fact that you already get a good sense of Jake Lockley's character with barely like 20 seconds of screen time is fantastic. I mean, you really got the idea that Jake Lockley just, he's cruel, maybe even slightly evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of seems... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I really liked the post-credit scene. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with these characters at all, so when they go into the hospital and pick up Arthur, like I had no idea. So I was like as interested and on the edge of my seat for this little, like 2-minute post-credit thing. Is what's going on? Is that like a good person that's coming in to get him, or is that like one of like his like henchmen coming in to get him to spring him so he can go do more bad stuff? I didn't know, so I was like, what's happening? But yeah, it was really cool, and then it was cool to see Khonshu like inside of the limousine. I thought that was really cool, where he was, just like a normal person size, because you'd only ever seen him like at great distances and big and huge and stuff. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, it was really good little post credit or mid credit scene.
Yeah, and it really has me intrigued. Like, I really want a season 2. I'd really prefer a season 2 rather than seeing like Moon Knight in a couple of cameos in Marvel movies. What would you guys prefer?
I've heard a lot of good ideas for how Moon Knight can be moved forward from here. Obviously, everyone said, let's get a season 2. Season 2 will probably be better, because now we all know we've got all the setup. Now we can start diving into some more MCU style stuff, whatever. But one thing that I've been really interested in is the idea of Midnight Suns, which is essentially just the team of, I think it's Doctor Strange, Moon Knight, Blade, and Ghost Rider, which I think is a really interesting and maybe a grittier version of Marvel. Maybe it's more similar to the Netflix shows like Daredevil, would be a really interesting way to do that. Because, if anyone's seen the Blade film, which came out in, what was it, 1980, I can't remember the exact day, but sometime in the 1980s, it was really gritty, and it was quite, I think it's one of the better Marvel movies, despite it not being during this MCU phase, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I would love to see the story continue, obviously, and I think, in some way or another we are going to see it. I think maybe the way that they do it, maybe an interesting way, I think, is you turn it over to being Layla's story now, and Moon Knight's going to be coming in as like a supporting character to her, so we get to see more of her story, because I feel like we've gotten the chance to kind of flesh out, Mark's story a little bit, and if you did a second season, I don't know where you go with Mark and Steven, that hasn't been explored. So maybe you turn it over to Layla and you kind of focus on her, maybe I don't know, rectifying stuff with the Egyptian gods or whatever, and then you can have Mark and Steven kind of come in as more of like a supporting role, and then ultimately we can learn more about Jake Lockley and Khonshu kind of that way. I would like to see that versus just going to the next Avengers film and Moon Knight shows up on one of the teams. So
yeah, that's a good point about like kind of fleshing out Layla more, because I think she wasn't fleshed out enough. And I think the real mystery of potential season 2, which I would prefer, to a movie, is kind of figuring out Jake Lockley, because I think like Stephen Grant and Mark Spector kind of have accepted each other, Not that there's like no room for them to grow, but like I think it's kind of like after Asylum, like what can you do really?
Right.
But yeah, I'd prefer season 2, and I kind of hope one happens. I really, really enjoyed Moon Knight. For a while, it was one of my favorites on Letterboxd, so I didn't put it there lightly,
That's right.
Yeah, but is there anything either of you, Jake or Brian, like wanted to mention that we kind of forgot to bring up?
No, I can't say no. Can't think of anything at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just to kind of one final point, we just talked about what we wanted to see there, and there is a line right at the kind of very end where Taweret tells Layla, that she talked to, her father, is, she's, taking him through the afterlife. So maybe that sets up for more of her story, and I hope so, because I think that she is an interesting character, and we could do good to get more of that. I think that would be interesting. So
yeah, I guess one thing I kind of remembered was Taweret kind of mentioning the ancestral plane, it reminds me of episodes 120 and 123, and in 123 we kind of mentioned like humans share 50% of their DNA with bananas, and humans, you kind of get the sense that like they kind of share more of the ancestral plane like than not, and no matter if like you're Khonshu or or you're Black Panther, in Wakanda, and I just thought that was a nice detail that they kind of included. And if you ever get quizzed on this podcast, I hope that you know that humans share 50% of their DNA with bananas, and
That's right.
and that would be good. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So now the only thing that we still need is we need like a Stephen Grant like travel channel show where he just goes around to the different tombs and talks to you about them, because that'd be pretty cool. So let's get to work on that. It'll be some supplemental material. We'll all watch it. We'll all love it. But while we're waiting for that, everyone should go and find Jake so they can see what he's working on concept art wise. If do you want to check some of his stuff out, Jake, thanks so much for joining us. Where should everyone come and find you, see what you've got going on?
You can probably find me on Instagram at jakebodyfarming.com. No, not .com, sorry. At jakebodyfarming. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what I said that. Just went through.
it's okay.
Oh yeah, thank you, Jake.
And yeah, thank you for coming on. And I mean, we usually close out by saying, "May the Force be with you." But I don't know. Is there something more Moon Knight to say?
Oh, no, no,
Later
I can't.
skaters.
Later
That's
skaters.
it. All right, 1, 2, 3. Later skaters.
Later skaters.
Oh, I missed it.